Welcome to Intentionality with Dr. Keita, the space where clarity meets calling and hustle bows to healing. I'm Dr. Keita Vanterpool, speaker, healer, advocate, and your guide to cultivating resilience, rest, and authentic success inside and out. Each week, we unpack soul-centered strategies for living aligned, leading well, and thriving with intention. Let's lead, live, and align intentionally.
Hello, and welcome to Intentionality. I am your hostess, Dr. Keita Vanterpool, and today we are talking to Chief Chanel Dickerson. But before we get into that, I'm going to let you know what we do here at Intentionality. I'm your hostess, Dr. Keita Vanterpool, and on this show, we delve deep into the interconnected realms of spirit, mind, and body because intentional living requires a holistic approach. Each episode, we dive into topics that matter. Career pivots, health equity, financial literacy, diversity, equity, and inclusion, with the aim of inspiring you to take action. Our mission is to create a nurturing environment where you can learn, grow, and empower yourself and others. Whether we're exploring holistic health practices, dissecting mindfulness techniques, or uncovering the secrets to resilience, every conversation is a step toward unlocking your true potential. Join us as we engage with thought leaders and change makers who share their journeys of reinvention and resilience. Together, let's cultivate a community of intentional leaders ready to make a lasting impact. This is Intentionality, where purpose meets practice. Welcome to the journey. So today we're going to be talking to the honorable, what I want to call her honorable, the beautiful, talented, wonderful Chief Chanel Dickerson. She's a woman who exemplifies resilience, strength, and leadership. Chanel is the CEO and founder of Chief Chanel Dickerson, LLC, where she serves as a coach, consultant, speaker, and author. Through her work, Chanel empowers girls and women to overcome self-doubt and limiting beliefs, enabling them to build confidence and dominate their careers, education, finances, and relationships. She advocates for setting healthy boundaries, fostering a positive mindset, and cultivating meaningful connections. Chief Chanel retired as Assistant Chief of Police from the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, DC, after a remarkable career spanning over 30 years. As the highest-ranking female officer for much of her tenure as Assistant Chief, she navigated the complexities of law enforcement while advocating for the community. Chanel's journey is a testament to resilience, having grown up in a marginalized community and survived multifaceted trauma, using her experiences to drive positive change within the force. Throughout her career, Chief Chanel's leadership in areas such as child abuse, domestic violence, and missing person cases has been nationally recognized. Her groundbreaking work earned her accolades, including the Heroes Special Recognition Awards from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Morris and Gwendolyn K. Fritz Award. She has been a prominent voice in discussions on human trafficking, women in leadership, and juvenile justice relations, and continues to inspire others through her journey. You can learn more about Chief Chanel at www.chiefchanelspeaks.com. Now let's dive into today's conversation on intentionality, where we will explore the theme of the pivot, understanding when life presents us with hard stops and how to navigate them with grace and determination. So now, as we move into Chief Chanel, we want to thank you for, again, joining us. And again, we welcome the audience. We welcome your feedback. If anything resonates with you, feel free to express yourself with a yup, an emoji, or whatever resonates with you. So welcome, Chief Chanel Dickerson, to the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keita, for having me.
All right, so we are going to really continue this discussion. Chief Chanel and I had this conversation a couple of days ago and recorded the conversation. However, today I thought it would be a great idea to have her on live because I think that sometimes when you are live, you can interact with the audience and they can see you and kind of like get that personal feel. So we're going to start with talking about the pivot. Chanel and I have been talking about the pivot for the last almost 8 months now, about how she and I have both been making some transitions within our career. And many of us are going through certain transitions in our lives, whether it's a divorce, whether it's changing careers, whether it's, whatever, having children or whatever it may be, or having to choose between your passion and your purpose, and or something that you need to do because you got to pay the bills. And so we're going to talk to Chief Chanel about her journey becoming an assistant chief police, and her journey along this path, and how she learned to pivot because of certain circumstances that happened throughout her life. So the first question I want to ask you, Chanel, is every person reaches a moment in life where they're forced to pivot, whether by choice or circumstance. For you, what was your defining moment when you realized you had to pivot and transition from one phase of life to the next? And how did that impact where you are today?
Thank you again, Dr. Keita, for the question. I have pivoted a lot in life, but I'll talk about my last decision to pivot. Now, mind you, I started with the Metropolitan Police Department as a police cadet at the age of 17 years old. So I worked at the Metropolitan Police for a majority of my adult life so far, right? And so I had to decide when to leave, when to pivot, when to go into chapter 2 of my life. That was a difficult decision because I had spent so much time there. I'm invested in the DC community and the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department. But in 2021, I was contacted by a civil rights attorney, Pamela Keith, and she informed me that 9 Black female officers on the Metropolitan Police Department had contacted her to file a lawsuit of discrimination, sexual harassment, and retaliation. And she wanted to talk to me about my experience as a Black woman in law enforcement at the Metropolitan Police Department, but also a Black woman. And at that time, I was the highest ranking woman on the police department. And although I was not a witness to the events that happened to some of the women on the police department, the 9 women on the police department, I knew that the things that they were describing had happened on the police department. It had happened to myself. And so I made the decision. It took me over 90 days to decide through prayer, meditation, because I knew the consequences at my level, at the executive level, at the highest ranking woman on the DC Police Department in the nation's capital now, at that time, to stand with 9 other women in the rank and file. Because I would have been the highest ranking woman, and I am the highest ranking woman on that lawsuit. But I had to make the decision that I needed to do what was right. I need to stand for the women, those women, but for the other women on the department whose voices were silent based on the abuse that they were experiencing, and the women who were coming behind me. So I had to make a decision of what did I want my legacy to be. And I made the choice to stand with those 9 other women and file a lawsuit against the Metropolitan Police Department and the District of Columbia.
That's pretty impactful because there's so many of us out here who feel like they have no voice, and standing up for what is right in space of, it's like David versus Goliath. I mean, you have this large department that you're actually going against. And it's not something that you brought upon yourself. It's something that they brought to you because of the inequities that existed within your realm, your space. And I too have had to do a David versus Goliath thing myself, and facing discrimination and microaggressions and things of that nature. And it's kind of hard to actually do your job when you are being faced with so much stuff that's coming at you every step of the way. So I'm going to pivot the conversation and talk about some of the microaggressions or some of the things that you experience, because there's a psychologist that I know, that many out there, that says, well, when African-American women or people of color reach a certain point in their career, that a lot of darts get thrown at them. And the idea is to remove you. And I'm talking about women specifically, not just women of color, but women in general. Sometimes we are removed from our spaces because of discrimination or whatever else. So if you could go back in the story and give us an example of some of the microaggressions or some of the things you experienced, because that helps resonate with many women that are out there. And if you have out there in the audience have experienced microaggressions, narcissistic behavior, or feeling like you're being attacked, please put something in the chat box on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. So if you could, Chanel, give us some examples of some of the things that you faced while going through before you actually decided to do this lawsuit.
Absolutely. In January of 2021, we had a change of leadership. The chief of police changed at the Metropolitan Police Department. So at that time, I was the assistant chief of the Patrol Services South Bureau, and that covered half of the city, the police districts, the first 6th and 7th police districts. Roughly about 1,100 men and women worked under my command at that time. So the change of the guard, if you will, happened at the police department. And a couple of months later, I was reassigned from the Patrol Services South Bureau to a newly created bureau, the Youth and Family Engagement Bureau. And I am a big advocate for the young people, not only in Washington, D.C., but all around the country. So my problem wasn't with that assignment, because the former chief and I had talked about like this assignment, and with my experience and expertise in the juvenile justice relations and handling juvenile cases, whether it was physical or child sexual abuse or child exploitation, that I saw how there was a need for me in that bureau. However, when I got into the bureau, I noticed that it was not what was discussed at all. And we had a rising violent crime issue with juveniles in the city. And I had no resources in that newly created bureau to combat that, to include that there was only one cruiser assigned to my immediate team, and that cruiser belonged to me. That was a cruiser that I drove back and forth to work, and I had to share it with the people on my immediate team. I was excluded from meetings about crime and trying to address the crime issues in the city. And I thought it was weird to me, or strange, because we had this juvenile crime problem. A person that's well versed in juvenile violence and crime and truancy was excluded from the meeting. Now, mind you, this was before the lawsuit. The lawsuit didn't take place until September of 2021. So I immediately noticed that these things were happening. But also, if I could go back a little bit, of when things happened or changed for me or made me look at policing with a different perspective, was May of 2020 with the murder of George Floyd. So a lot of things happened during that time, because people were looking at the men and women in law enforcement, especially the Black men and women in law enforcement. Are you Black or are you blue?
Mm.
When something happened. And I understood that the outrage. I was outraged at what happened. However, the whole defund the police movement, because in DC, our budget was cut, I think maybe by $15 million or more. And I had to start thinking about if I had chosen the right career. I have wanted to be a police officer since I was 9 years old. I was vested in the community. I was vested in the men and women in the agency. And I felt like you had a police officer that took the life of someone that did not deserve to die. And then I had a situation where our budget was cut. So that means that I was just trying to deal with all of those personal issues. And then months later, less than a year later, I get moved out of my command and replaced by someone with less education and less experience. And so
Wow.
at that time, I also noticed that in the patrol bureau, in my particular bureau, I had 2 female commanders and I was the female assistant chief. Within 6 months of this new leadership, there were no females in leadership in the patrol bureau at all. Like command and executive leadership was removed. Someone comes in and 6 months later, and whether that was intentional or not, is just that someone didn't have the wherewithal to actually be able to look at that through the lens of saying, what perception am I giving here, whether it was intentional or not. So it was still a problem with me either way, that if you wanted to make moves, you didn't look at that I'm removing all of the women out of patrol. And if you look at when women started in law enforcement many, many, many years ago, we only could assume the roles of like matrons in jails or over children and women's centers. So I felt like, although I wanted to be a vital part of reducing crime in the city, particularly the crime of violence that young people were committing or was committed against them, I felt like that you were taking me so far back in history to say that this is the only place that a woman can serve is in this type of role. And I actually had more education and equal amount of experience than the person who had taken over the job. And I understand law enforcement because people pick their preferences. So it has nothing to do with in reference to your education and your experiences. People will pick the person they're comfortable with and their preference. And I knew for a fact that it had nothing to do with that I was not capable to do that job.
Well, my mind's blown because it never ceases to amaze me. I don't have to like you to do my job.
Yeah.
If we're here to protect the public, you're here to protect and serve. And if you don't like me because of whatever personality differences, screw that. If this woman or this person is doing a great job, let them do their job, provide the resources, and to purposefully or even not purposefully to withhold resources that's going to help support public protection, you're working against your own mission and your own vision. So the question becomes, are you really about protecting the public, or are you about just, I don't know what to call it. I really don't, Chanel. So, and when you have someone who's less qualified than you to do a job, and not even, I think even going before that, not even having a conversation with leadership and saying, Chief Chanel, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on it? To consult with the expert. So whether you wanted me to be there or not, the idea of you coming to me as a mature individual and saying, look, we're going to have a change in guard, and I want you in on the conversation. You may not be here, but are you willing to, join the conversation so we can know what to do with our next steps? At least say something. Don't just like keep me out the conversation. I think it's, number one, very immature, and it shows a lack of leadership because leaders have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And people who are bosses, they just do whatever they want to do, not looking at the totality or what's best for the organization as a whole. Because when you look good, DC looks good, right? I'm making the mayor look good. We're doing a great job out here in the streets, but you're withholding stuff from me. How am I going to do a good job? And then you have another person who's not qualified. How are they going to direct and lead those who are their subordinates and instruct them on what to do? So I find that there's so many gaps and so many people that have the qualifications that are in leadership, and they're not respected enough to have these conversations. So that way you can still pass the buck and move forward. So whether you want me or not, let's have a conversation about it. Don't just dog me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
No, I understood that. I understood that when you get at a certain level, and like I wasn't in my position, I wanted to have the best people to do the job. And I'm okay if someone say, Chanel, you're not that person for me. But to be in the public safety ecosystem is a huge responsibility, right? It weighed on me day and night and kept me up at night because I wanted to do my part to ensure that DC was a safe city for everyone, whether you live there, work there, or visited the city. And that is how they say heavy is the head that wears the crown. I mean, I do understand that, but you're right. With my experience, with my education, I deserve to be in the room to come up with ideas, to have that diverse perspective, because that's what you have. When you bring women into a conversation, you definitely get a diverse perspective.
absolutely. I agree 100%. So we're going to go to another question because that was a pretty interesting conversation there, because a lot of us, again, are going through very similar things. And like I said, Chanel, I was dogged myself, and I was the most qualified person for the position that I was running for. And I was released, actually suspended for no real good reason. And so I understand the complexities of, if I'm not your person, so be it. But let's make it a fair process, right?
Yes.
So when you were ridiculed and ostracized, it could have easily broken your spirit. And we're going to talk about that because this goes down deep to the core of who you are and your character, your integrity, and your values. How did you manage not only to survive that period, but use it as a springboard to reinvent yourself and become stronger and on the other side? Because I know that you have 30 years of experience doing this stuff. And now all of a sudden you're thrown into a whole nother realm of what's going on. So could you explain to us and share some of your experiences in that area?
Working as a woman in a male dominant profession, you need all these tools. And well, I needed all these tools along the way. And I had to build a strong foundation. And my faith has always been that strong foundation. And it doesn't mean that things did not come up and challenge that. It was just what I went to be able to get through. And my mother had given me a small magnet with the Serenity Prayer on it. And it was just something about it. I mean, I knew the Serenity Prayer, it's a popular prayer, but it was something about it being on my desk and me reading it, years ago of talking about really understanding the things that you cannot change and the courage to change the things that you can and the wisdom to know the difference. Right. And so that's where that foundation, and I'm glad I had that. I also regularly, I still see my therapist to this day, but throughout my career, I regularly saw a therapist. I had a naturopathic doctor that I still see to this day.
No.
Yes. Yes. What happened?
Chanel,
Yes.
we missed that last part. Say that again about your therapist.
Oh, I was saying that's part of my tools that I had was seeing a therapist, having a naturopathic doctor. I had a trainer and I participated in a running group at 5 a.m. every morning, Body by Kai, Spirit by God. I mean, she's a DC trainer that invested in me to help me be able to navigate through the different ranks. So that would all take me to 2022. My decision to retire from the police department is because I noticed that leadership was trying to erase my history, a place where I had spent 30 years dedicated to not only the city, but the men and women at the department and the great work that I had done in those areas, because I decided to stand up for an injustice. Then you're going to erase my history there. Like there was no way that I was going to allow that. I was going to leave on my own terms. And I'll give you an example of how that happened. I happened to come out of police headquarters and saw a group of women together, and there was a videographer and they were recording a video. I later found out that it was for the 30 by 30 initiative. And that is an initiative where law enforcement agencies across the country are pledging to increase the women on their department to 30% by the year of 2030. So MPD had signed the pledge. They were doing a video, and the videographer saw me coming out of the building. And he said, oh, wait, Chief Dickerson is coming. And so I got in this video. We recorded it. And for me to only later find out that as I walked away and went to my office, that they called some of the women back to redo the video without me in it. And that was the video that was released to the public, was the video without me in it. And when I heard that, it was like a punch in my stomach, because at that time, and the sacrifice that women make. So I'm not the only woman that has made a sacrifice in law enforcement, obviously, and not even at MPD, but I just knew the sacrifices that I had made. And then to do that, so that was intentional. It's not like you couldn't get in touch with me and I was absent that day and could not be a part of it. No, you intentionally. So someone had to make that decision. And think about it. I am an assistant chief of police. So I only had one boss, the chief of police.
Right.
So who made the decision to call women back out and re-record the video? Yeah.
That's just dirty.
Yeah.
I got some stories too. Well, we ain't gonna talk about me today.
Yeah.
But just the mere thought and the audacity for me, it speaks about immaturity. It really is talking about leadership on a whole new level. Because again, if you were really a true leader, leaders are mature. A good leader, I would say that. A good leader is going to have conversations with you, right? And you're not going to purposefully just throw me out to the wolves and leave me out there hanging. But God, and I always say that because God always, and thank God for your serenity prayer and all the things that you have been doing to support yourself. And we talked about holistic health and how you have all along been exercising, eating well. You're taking care of your mind, body, and your spirit. You're taking care of your spiritual health as well. And had you not had these tools in your toolbox, I can only imagine just the stress alone can create dis-ease. But you have been able to maintain a certain level of health to guide you through this process. And thank God you are a praying woman and have people in your corner to support you, because it can be very lonely at the top. And a lot of people don't understand the complexities of being a leader at that level and what kind of stress and what kind of responsibilities are placed upon you. So I commend you, and I'm so grateful for you in this conversation, because a lot of us out here have experienced something similar to what you have experienced. I'm sorry, but not sorry that you've gone through it. And I say I'm not sorry because it's taking you to another level.
Yeah.
And I think that when God, I think when it's time for you to pivot, is sometimes God is saying to you, look, your time is up here.
Yeah.
Let's do something else. And let me put you in a place where people are going to respect you, put you where you belong. And then you'll have a larger voice and a larger audience, because now you can reach a larger, a more diverse group of people. You're not just within the realm of this particular sphere. So now you're able to reach a larger audience. So the good part about that is you're able to expand and reach a larger multitude of people. So, and then have these conversations as well, because a lot of times when you're in that leadership position, you have to understand that certain conversations are not to be had on the outside. Everything stays inside. So I can only imagine some of the things you've gone through emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, Chanel, because it's not easy. So thank you for sharing that. So when it came to your career, what kept you grounded and willing to stay on the force despite the consistent setbacks and challenges?
Outside of the things I just mentioned, my why. Like, you have to know why you're doing like anything in life, and you could go back to that. And when things got tough for me in law enforcement, I said to myself, like, I deserve to be here. Like, I don't have to switch careers because some other people don't want me here.
Mhm.
And so my why was, as you mentioned in my bio, I grew up in a marginalized community, a community of poverty, of gun violence, of drugs, of sexual predators in our community. Like, I fought my way through that. I had a crossroad at some point in my life, and the Metropolitan Police Department Police Cadet Program was my fair shot. Like, it was my fair shot. And I love the agency. I love the city, but it doesn't mean that you can't love the agency and love the city, but demand that we do better. And that's what happened. And that was my driving force to say, I can only imagine women who came on. I went to a funeral recently of one of the patrol officers. She retired many years ago, but she came on in 1971. And that was the year that I was born. And I was looking at what my journey had been in law enforcement. I can only imagine what her journey had been. And so I stand on the shoulders of all the women who have done this job before me to get where I am. So I am going to be at this level and then do what when I'm presented with something that may be a little tough. because people told me that I was putting the nail in my coffin. They were like, you will retire, you would never get a job.
Yep.
You would never become chief of police anywhere. Because everyone that knew me knew when I was 17 years old, I said, I am going to become a chief of police. Actually, I said I was going to become a chief of police of the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, DC. So people knew that that was a part of my journey. And that's how I led my life based on that. But I made the decision at the crossroads again, right? Right and wrong. What do you do?
Let me say this to you, because and I'm saying this just to you and myself also in the audience. Had I not done what I did and sued, had you not done what you did and sued, where would your mindset be today? Would you feel, could you sleep with yourself? Could you live with yourself if you had not taken that extra step?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know me. So I know that it would have bothered me every day. So I know I was just presented with a situation that I made the best decision for me. And, you know, some people talk about it. They're like, hey, why are you still talking about that? Get over it. Like, go on with your life. Like, you're retired now. But I beat to my own drum. I live my life on my own terms. And so no one gets to tell me when to stop telling my story. Like, I think about, and there have been women pioneers like way before you and I, right? But Harriet Tubman was the one that did it for me, right? Because she escaped slavery and went back not only one time, but several times to help other people, right? And so I just thought about that to say, in those times, if she could do that, then I'm presented with this dilemma here. And so what am I going to do? Am I going to be self-serving? Is self-preservation going to kick in? And it did not. I did not. Self-preservation did not kick in here. But maybe it did, right? Because I saved my mental health. It did kick in because God knew there's no way I would be able to live with myself to see those other women staying there. And what would I say? Like, that is what they're saying is untrue. Yeah.
Man, look, girl. So I'm speechless. I'm speechless on that one because, again, when you talk about self-preservation, I know for me in my situation, I would not have been able to live with myself had I not took up for myself. But that would be me accosting and saying to my spirit, I'm not worthy enough to take up for myself. So basically, Keita, you have to make a decision. It's going to cost you, but financially, however, I think for me, spiritually and physically and emotionally and otherwise, I would be sick as a dog, right? And my spirit would not allow me to hurt my own self. Yeah. So self-preservation in its highest form is honoring your spirit no matter what. And thank God I have someone to help support me in all of this. But for those of us who don't have that support, those of us who don't have, let me say it this way. I think it comes down to really faith and trusting God.
Yep.
And really understanding, because some people make decisions based off of what they think their source is.
Yeah.
And some people make decisions out of, how do I say this? Because they want to get ahead. They'll do anything to get ahead. They'll lose their religion. They'll lose every part of their values and character and integrity to get something, to get ahead. Yeah. And then over time, that repeated nature of doing it over and over again, you become numb. So you'll do whatever you can do at whatever cost because you don't care anymore because it's all about your success or rising to the top. So step on me all you may. But at the same time, karma does have a place and things, and not to say all about karma, but when it's time for you to move and when God is ready for you to move out of a situation, certain things will happen in that space to remove you from whatever else may come that may be harmful later on. So, you could take this so many different ways, Chanel. But I want to talk about your career as you began before you became really into the police force. I want you to talk about your personal life, about what happened, talking about family, Did you have a family? Did you want a family? If so, how did that impact your decisions to move forward in rising to the ranks of where you were as Assistant Chief Police? And what are your thoughts and what can you share to others out there who are faced with, okay, I want a family. I know this is a very demanding occupation and profession. However, I still want to be able to be everything. And not saying that you can't be everything, but what are some of the challenges and opportunities that presented to you as you thought about your career and your career choices?
Ooh, look, that's like a loaded question with a lot of things. My mind is flooding with all kinds of memories, but I think it's important for me to share this. So I talked about growing up in poverty in a community of violence, and I was told that I would not achieve anything in life, and I would have a bunch of children and be a part of the welfare system, right? So I was told that. I mentioned to you that Metropolitan Police Department Police Cadet Program was presented to me, and that was my fair shot. I wanted to be a police officer since I was 9. I was presented with the opportunity at 17, and I said, okay, I jumped right at the opportunity. At 18 years old, I became pregnant, and I was told by the leaders at the police cadet program that I had an ultimatum. I had to terminate my pregnancy or be terminated from the police cadet program. And I chose to terminate my pregnancy because I knew that I could not take care of a child without a job. And of course, what was told to me early on in life, I think I was 12 years old at the time, to tell me that that was my future, that my future would be that I wouldn't achieve anything and be on welfare with a bunch of kids. I was like, yeah, no, not me. Like, no, not me. And so I made that decision, but that decision impacted future decisions. And I have no biological children to this day, because navigating through the male dominant profession, I never wanted someone else to have that type of control over me. Like, I should have been able to choose to be a mother and still have a career. Like, there was nothing in a policy, and that's what someone came up and said, oh, is there something in a policy at the police department to say if you get pregnant, then you cannot, be employed there? Absolutely not. But it's something about a culture, right? Mm-hmm. It's something about a culture, and that you could be fired in your probationary period for just about anything, right? And so I had to make those decisions. I saw my other female colleagues on the job and things that they had to do that no woman should ever have to do, because she's a single mother and with a child and trying to work the different shifts. So I decided then that I would not have a child. And I later married my boyfriend, who I was pregnant by at the time. We later got married. We are now divorced. We grew up in that same community in Southeast Washington, DC. But we are both good people and just couldn't figure out how to be good together. And being married to a woman in law enforcement, I have to say that it can be tough to be married with this type A personality, because you're in this male dominant profession, right? And I had aspirations to climb the ladder in the police department, and that comes with a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And so I look back over my life, like, I don't live life in regrets. I really believe that my steps are ordered by God. So I am where I am supposed to be. And I'm not saying that it's some little bumps in the road that I experienced that I may have caused. But I know right now I am where I'm supposed to be. I am supposed to use my voice and my platform to make not only law enforcement better for women, but make the world better for women.
I am truly inspired by that. I mean, I was never pregnant, but I thought I wanted a child throughout my career. So I became a chiropractor because I knew that it would allow me the lifestyle that I wanted to, and not be on call all the time and let me call for surgeries all the time. And So I made a conscious decision, like a type A personality. I knew that if I were to get pregnant and have a kid, my husband would take care of the kid because I'm busy. I got work to do. I would need a housekeeper, nanny, and all that. But I've never ever been faced with the challenge of I had to choose between my career and having a family. That was a choice that I made. But to be in the police, in that realm, it's very challenging for women.
Yeah.
And it's not fair, but I still see that there's still, like you said, some mindset that we still have to parse through with discrimination. Because you're a woman, they think you can't do anything. I can do whatever you could do, and maybe even better.
Yeah.
But I think that the ego plays a large role in having women serve in these capacities that seem to so-called outshine a man. But again, when I look good, we all look good.
Yes.
And I think that there's no limitations in the capabilities of a woman compared to a man. But again, we're in a society where we're looked upon and being ostracized because, number one, if you're have a cast on you because you had decided to not terminate a pregnancy, you're cast aside because you're a woman, you're a woman of color, you're intelligent. You have all these things that supposed to be pluses on your resume, but they end up being a strike against you for being great. So I wanted to ask you, because there's so many young women out there who aspire to be police officers and in the field, with maybe even a military field or even another dangerous profession, even a firefighter. And what kinds of, what I want to say? What can you say to those out there who are young, who really aspire? And again, the mental abuse that you were put under is another whole level of disgrace. Being told what you can't do and who you're going to be, and you're going to be nothing. I mean, that's a whole nother level of mental abuse. And then what you're trying to do is to come out of that space and make better of your life. And there's many women in DC, young girls in DC, matter of fact, who are struggling with this same generational curses, so to speak, that's passed down from generation to generation, the hateful chatter that they're experiencing every single day. What can you say to these young women out there, and even women in general, who may be going through some similar things of the mental and emotional abuse?
Oh, yeah. First thing I'll say is that you're good enough. And you have to believe it and know it and build a foundation, because obstacles are going to come your way. Like, we are women. People are going to think that we do not have a role, whether it's law enforcement or the military or some other role. They believe that some places in society, women has no place there. So we know this, right? So that means that we have to prepare for this when it comes, because it's not if it's coming, it's when it comes. And so I would tell the younger women too, that's in a situation like I was in, is you're at a crossroad. Make the decision in your life that you're going to do better and be better, and do not allow anyone to stop you. But more importantly, don't stop yourself, because the negative self-talk, that is something to you. Because I tell people, it's not the words you have with people, it's those thoughts you have when you by yourself, that will convince you that you're not good enough and you should not achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. So if I had to say something to people, I would really want someone to know that you are good enough, because I think that's what happens with the lack of confidence and the self-doubt, is because there's somewhere along the way that a woman has experienced something where she feels like that she doesn't belong. Because I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago that says that take your seat at the table. And if there's no chair, bring your own. Like, exactly. It's that part. Like, really, you have to. And I think I really want to say and make sure I hone in on, because I was mindful not to be a diversity checkbox, right? And so what I mean by that, even if someone else was making the decision said, oh, we need a woman in this position, or we need a Black woman in this position, I made sure that I was prepared for the position. So whatever goals that you have as a woman, make sure you have the education and the experience. Do not wait on the organization to send you to training. You have to seek out your own professional development and make sure that you are ready for any job that comes your way. Because what I think that happens is sometimes people would put a woman in a position and hope that the woman failed so they can say, oh, we did that. We tried that. Oh, that was a disaster. So we're never going to do that again. Like, yeah, I have this pillow that says, be so good, they can't ignore you. And I took that pillow around with me at every place I went to at the police department. You could find this pillow that said, be so good. It was just my reminder, because mindset is everything.
It's everything.
Yeah.
And I think that, Chanel, some people are intimidated by greatness. Okay. And you're only as good as the 5 people around you, the average, right? As they say. And so when someone is better than you at something, because I'm going to be great at my own thing, I want to learn and glean as much as I can from you, because that's how the diversity, that's how you strengthen the actual unit. And so with that being said, as a leader, what could you say, or what kind of advice would you give for those at the top, kind of like you and I were at the top? What kind of advice would you give for us leaders in seeking psychotherapy or mental health professional? Because a lot of times people are looked down upon for seeing a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, or a shrink for that matter. I personally think that every high level functioning person, everybody actually needs a psychotherapist and a psychiatrist, because you cannot go this road alone. And if you think you can, you're fooling yourself, in particular in the African American communities. So what kind of advice and or experience could you provide to us that's going to support, or give me your opinion about that? How about that?
Well, I agree with you. I think it's absolutely necessary, and we need to break the stigma, especially in the Black community, that seeking mental health services is bad for you, right? I am pursuing a certification as a mental health coach for first responders, because as a law enforcement officers, we see some of the worst of the worst, right? And we're expected to pack up, go home, and act normal with our family and forget about all of the terrible things we've seen, or go out in the community and engage professionally with the community. So getting this help is absolutely necessary. I think leaders in any organization should make sure they have a healthy workforce, and not only just providing it, because over the years throughout the years of my time at MPD, we've had the employee assistance program, and I faithfully utilized that program all the way up to the rank of an assistant chief. And I made sure as an assistant chief that I would drive my Mark Cruiser, that I drove myself with my Mark Cruiser, and park in front of the facility, because what I wanted everyone to see that I was there for services. I wanted the men and women on the department who was coming for an appointment or leaving an appointment, they would see my cruiser, and my cruiser was number 3, and they knew that I was there seeking services as well. And so that makes people comfortable. If you have this conversation to say it's okay to not be okay, it's okay to say I need to talk to someone. We have to talk about that more. We have to encourage each other to seek help, but we also have to check in on one another. When we know that people are dealing with a tough situation, we should check in. And don't forget about the strong ones, because the strong ones, or the people that we perceive as strong, or people who have it all together, people are less likely to check in on those folks.
Yeah.
We just think they have it all together.
I agree 100%. And so lastly, you're talking about leading by example. And again, a lot of us play this role that we're so strong that we don't need any help, and we're embarrassed or ashamed to seek help. So if you are out there and you have some mental health issues that you're dealing with, please do not be afraid to go out there and seek mental health, or someone you know who can support you in that area, because it's super important. Again, suicide is at a high rate at this point in time. People are, going to drugs and alcohol to cope. When there's people out there who have the expertise to support you in those areas. So please, if you have any mental health issues or emotional issues, please seek help for that. So we're going to wrap this up, Chanel. Do you have any last and final words about your experience as a leader for people out there and the importance of not only diversity, equity, and inclusion? What could you give us and provide to us about diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to women, even men, and what impact it has on an organization and its growth and its impact on just how the organization operates?
Yeah. All lives matter, right? That's the start with it. And everyone in your organization deserves an opportunity to excel if that's what they want to do. Because I used to create a career advancement profile for my team because I wanted to know what each person wanted to do. Some people do not want to excel. They like to stay at the front line, right? But you can help them be successful at that front line. And most of the time, employees want to be treated fairly. They want a system or a process that's fair, because we understand sometimes that everyone can't get the promotion. There's only so many promotions or so many opportunities for your agency to pay for your education or things like that. But if you create a system that's fair, people will respect the outcome. And I think that leaders in agencies, particularly law enforcement agencies, need to understand that law enforcement is a culture by itself. Mm-hmm. Each individual agencies have their own culture, and then there's subcultures inside of the agency. So not only in law enforcement, because I'm talking about that, but in any organization, pay attention to what cultures you have brewing in your organization, because you may be at the head of the organization and don't even realize how someone, because I mentioned earlier, I had 1,100 men and women that work under my command. There's no way I was going to know how every frontline officer was being treated, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to create policies or create a platform for people who are being mistreated at work. They should have a platform to be able to talk about what's happening to them without the fear of retaliation. And so I think that that's a start, because what happens is there's plenty of studies out there that shows that when people are not treated well at work, right, that they call out. Mm-hmm. So their sick leave, their performance when they're at work. So if you focus on having a healthy workforce, then it will be more productive. And when you think about law enforcement and our interaction with the community, we should want law enforcement officers to be healthy, to have mental health services. And so I tell every leader that's there to really go back and assess, do some introspection, to look at you to see how you're making your agency or your organization better.
Those are very powerful words and profound, because my company, we actually do corporate wellness programs. And you're right, it starts at the top where leadership is, because if the leadership is healthy and happy and healthy, then that trickles down to the employees as well. And so again, for those companies who are struggling and those leaders who are struggling, please do seek out help, because that's the best way to ensure that your organization on the downstream, check in with them, like Chanel said, check in with them, because they also need to know that you care. And when people believe and know that you care, then they're going to perform better, period. So thank you so much, Chanel, for this wonderful conversation. Are there any closing words you want to leave for the audience at this moment?
I would just like to give the call or text number of 988 if someone is suffering a mental health crisis, that they could call or text 988 to get some type of help. There's no shame in it. We all probably have some level of mental health concerns or issues at any given moment. So please just reach out and talk to someone. And any organization, please push that out. Anyone that's listening tonight at your organization tomorrow, make a point to tell people what's available to them and make sure people understand that it's okay to not be okay. I think I would like to leave with that. It's okay to not be okay. Seek help.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And those are some really wise words from Chief Chanel Dickerson. It's okay to not be okay. Seek help when you need it. And I hope this conversation really resonated with many of you out there, because again, I'm not alone in this process. Chanel's not alone in this process. There's so many of us out there who are going through so many things right now. Discrimination is real. It's still alive and well. Racism is out there still. But if we can do our part, one person at a time can make a huge difference and impact. Just get to know someone before you make that judgment and that judgment call on someone else. Do the right thing when no one is looking. Those are really important things to live by. So as we go through the outro, I want to thank you guys again for being here. Again, thank you for joining us on this journey of growth, learning, and intention. At Intentionality, we aim to inspire, change, and challenge perspectives and provide you with the tools to live purposefully in every aspect of your life. Remember, every step you take toward intentional living brings you closer to a life of fulfillment and impact. Stay tuned for more enlightening conversations, actionable insights, and transformative experiences. Until next time, stay focused, stay intentional, and continue to make your mark. I'm Dr. Keita Vanterpool, and this has been Intentionality. Be well, stay strong, and keep walking in your purpose. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining me on Intentionality with Dr. Keita, the space where clarity meets calling and hustle bows to healing. As we close today's episode, take a moment to honor your journey and the intentional steps you're making toward aligned leadership, whole person wellness, and resilient success. If you found value in our conversation, share this episode with someone you care about, and be sure to subscribe for more soul-centered strategies each week. Until next time, keep leading, living, and aligning intentionally.